The sound of the morning no longer begins with the soft rustle of leaves or the melodic trill of songbirds. Instead, the dawn is met with a rhythmic, metallic screeching, the sound of serrated beaks sharpening themselves against rusted rebar. In the shadows of the rusted outskirts, something moves with a heavy, synthetic clicking. It is not quite animal, yet it is undeniably alive. We once feared that pollution would kill the planet, but we were wrong. Life did not perish under the weight of our discarded excess, it simply learned to eat it. The ecosystem has shifted, and in this new world, the line between the organic and the industrial has vanished, leaving behind a predatory landscape where survival is written in plastic and steel. The air smells of ozone and burnt polyethylene. It is a thick, cloying scent that sticks to the back of the throat, a reminder that the atmosphere itself has become a byproduct of the Great Synthesis. Walking through the overgrown ruins of a coastal city, one might notice the vines first. At a distance, they look like ivy, but closer inspection reveals they are woven from frayed copper wiring and discarded fiber optic cables, drawing what little nutrients they can from the heavy metals in the soil. They don't just grow, they pulse with a low-voltage hum, a phantom nervous system left behind by a civilization that never learned how to stop consuming. If you stand still long enough, you can hear the faint crackle of static discharge leaping from leaf to leaf, a tiny, electric heartbeat of a world that refuses to die. In the canopy above, the birds of the new era watch with eyes that resemble polished glass marbles. Their feathers are not soft down, but thin, overlapping scales of carbon fiber and recycled aluminum, scavenged from the skeletons of downed drones and discarded electronics. When they fly, they do not flap silently. They click and whir like clockwork mechanisms. One such creature, a hawk-like predator with a beak forged from high-carbon kitchen knives, dives toward a movement in the brush. Its prey is a rodent-like thing, but its hide is not fur. It is a shimmering, translucent membrane of melted PET plastic, hardened into a jagged armor that deflects the bird's initial strike with a sound like shattering glass. The struggle between predator and prey is no longer a dance of flesh and blood, but a grinding of gears and chemical reactions. The rodent scampers toward a pile of rotting rubber tires, its claws tiny, needle-like shards of galvanized steel, digging deep into the tread. This is the new wild. There is no green here, only shades of slate gray, industrial orange, and the sickly neon glow of chemical runoff. The sun struggles to pierce the smog, casting a perpetual twilight over a world that has repurposed the debris of the 20th century into a functional, if horrifying, anatomy. The conflict is eternal, a friction of metal on metal that echoes through the hollowed-out ribs of skyscrapers. To understand this change, one must look at the marrow. In the old world, bones were made of calcium. In the new world, the creatures that roam the wasteland have reinforced their skeletons with microplastics and resin. Their blood is a viscous slurry of hydrocarbons and heavy metals, acting more like hydraulic fluid than an oxygen carrier. This adaptation was not a choice but a necessity. As the natural world collapsed, the species that survived were those that could integrate the inorganic into their very DNA. They are the cyborgs of nature, the accidental children of an age of unbridled production. Their bodies are maps of our landfills, their genetics a ledger of our waste. A movement near a stagnant pool of oil-slicked water reveals a larger inhabitant of this wasteland. It is a creature that might have once been a wolf, but its proportions are wrong. Its legs are elongated, reinforced with struts of scavenged titanium, and its skin is a patchwork of heat-fused nylon and weathered vinyl. It doesn't breathe so much as it vents, releasing small puffs of steam from gill-like slits along its neck. It drinks from the pool, its reinforced gut capable of processing toxins that would have dissolved the internal organs of its ancestors. It is a masterpiece of unintentional engineering, a living testament to the resilience of life in the face of total environmental degradation. Every movement is accompanied by the hiss of a piston and the low moan of a straining joint. The terror of this world lies not in the strangeness of these creatures, but in their familiarity. You can see the ghost of a house cat in the way a plastic-scaled feline stalks a mechanical rat. You can see the memory of a deer in the graceful, if clattering, stride of a creature with antlers made of twisted rebar. They are shadows of the past, wearing the skins of our garbage. They have become the ultimate recyclers, turning our waste into muscle, bone, and tooth. In this ecosystem, nothing is lost. Every discarded bottle, every broken screen, every scrap of synthetic fabric is a potential building block for a new form of terror. The very concept of trash has been deleted from the biological dictionary. Deep within the urban canyons, where the buildings lean against each other like dying giants, the plastisphere reaches its most complex form. Here, the very ground is a compressed layer of refuse, miles deep, forming a new kind of geology. There are strata of soda cans and tectonic plates of crushed shipping containers. The creatures here have evolved to mimic their surroundings with terrifying efficiency. A predator might lie perfectly still, its body disguised as a discarded rusted radiator, only to spring forward with a hiss of pressurized air when an unsuspecting scavenger passes by. It is a world of constant ambush, where the landscape itself is hungry, and the distinction between the floor and the beast is often a fatal one. Humanity, or what remains of it, exists on the fringes of this new reality. We are no longer the masters of the environment, we are interlopers in a system that has moved on without us. Our tools are the same as the creatures' bodies, scavenged, repurposed, and brittle. We watch from the shadows of our crumbling concrete fortresses, listening to the grinding of the world outside. We realize too late that the away we threw things to was not a void, but a nursery. We fed the earth a diet of poisons, and it responded by giving birth to a nightmare that can digest us just as easily as it digests a plastic bag. We are the architects of our own obsolescence, watching our creations inherit the earth. There is a specific kind of silence that falls over the wasteland just before a storm. It is not a peaceful silence, but a pressurized one. The clouds above are heavy with particulate matter, and when the rain falls, it is not water, but a mild acid that hisses against the synthetic hides of the prowling beasts. During these storms, the razorbirds retreat to their nests, structures made of barbed wire and shredded tarps, and the ground dwellers seek shelter in the hollowed-out hulls of ancient buses. The world holds its breath, the only sound the pitter-patter of corrosive droplets hitting a billion surfaces of non-biodegradable waste. It is a cold, chemical baptism that fuels the strange metabolism of this new earth. In the center of the ruins stands a structure that was once a skyscraper. Now, it is a vertical forest of a different kind. Huge, bloated arachnids, their legs made of tempered glass rods, weave webs of high-tensile fishing line across the gaps between floors. They wait for the wind to catch a stray piece of debris or a small flying creature, their vibrations sensed through the metallic frame of the building. To them, the city is not a ruin, it is a hunting ground, perfectly suited to their synthetic biology. They are the architects of the heights, turning our monuments of commerce into webs of lethal intent. When the wind blows, the building sings a discordant song of tension and wire. The most disturbing aspect of this evolution is the blurring of the boundary between the living and the dead. This is most evident in the ritual of the boneyard, a place where the broken and the non-functional are brought by their kin. When a creature of the waste finally ceases to function, it does not rot in the traditional sense. It does not return to the earth to become soil. Instead, its components are scavenged by others in the cold, methodical process of redistribution. A fallen predator might have its skin peeled away to patch the wounds of another, or its bones taken to reinforce a nest. It is a closed-loop system of mechanical necropsy. The materials just keep circulating, changing shapes, moving from one hungry organism to the next, eternally trapped in a cycle of synthetic reincarnation. There is no grief in these rituals, only the silent, efficient exchange of resources. As the night deepens, the bioluminescence of the waste begins to show. It is not the soft glow of fireflies, but the harsh, flickering light of chemical reactions in the pools of runoff and the glowing phosphors scavenged from broken television sets. The wasteland becomes a grid of eerie, artificial colors, electric blues, toxic greens, and a pulsing, bruised purple. In this light, the creatures of the dark are revealed. They move with a jagged, unsettling grace, their silhouettes a chaotic mess of organic curves and industrial angles. They are the new lords of the earth, and they are perfectly at home in the neon gloom. The darkness is alive with the hum of failing capacitors and the low-frequency thrum of industrial hearts. The conflict of this existence is a constant struggle for integrity. The creatures must balance their organic needs with the maintenance of their inorganic parts. A cyborg wolf must find calories to fuel its muscles, but it must also find lubricants to keep its joints from seizing. It must seek out specific types of plastics to repair its hide after a fight. This creates a new kind of hunger, a craving not just for meat, but for specific chemical compounds and material properties. The search for a particular grade of high-density polyethylene can drive a pack of scavengers across miles of treacherous terrain, turning the hunt into a quest for structural survival. To live is to maintain, and to maintain is to consume the very substance of the past. We often wonder if there is a consciousness behind this new world, or if it is just the blind persistence of life. Do the razorbirds feel the wind beneath their carbon fiber wings the same way their ancestors did? Does the plastic-skinned wolf feel the cold, or is its nervous system so entwined with sensors and synthetic pathways that its experience of the world is entirely alien to us? We look into their glass marble eyes and see no reflection of our own humanity. We see only the cold, calculating drive of a biology that has been forged in the furnace of our negligence. They are not our children, though they are made of our things. They are the Earth's response to our presence, a silent, grinding judgment. The air thickens as the midnight hours approach, and the great heat seems to moan. It is the sound of shifting weight, of thousands of tons of garbage settling under its own mass. Beneath the surface, there are things we have never seen: burrowing organisms that have replaced earthworms, their bodies resembling flexible armored conduits, churning the plastic soil to find pockets of trapped gases. They are the unseen engineers of the underworld, ensuring that even the deepest layers of our waste are integrated into the living machine. They are the digestive system of a world that has learned to process everything we ever cast aside. This is not a story of the end of the world. It is a story of a world that refused to end. It is a dark thriller of biology where the villain is not a single entity, but the very concept of disposable. Every item we ever threw away has been claimed. Every piece of trash has been given a purpose, a hunger, and a set of teeth. The ecosystem of waste is not a failure of nature, it is nature's ultimate adaptation. It has taken the weapons we used against it, the chemicals, the plastics, the metals, and it has worn them as armor. The world is a survivor, and it has evolved into a form that can withstand the very poisons that were meant to destroy it. As the first hint of a chemical dawn begins to gray the horizon, the screeching of the razorbirds begins again. They are sharpening their beaks for a new day of hunting in the ruins. They are patient. They have all the time in the world, and they have all the materials they could ever need. We are living in the shadow of a new kingdom, one built on the foundations of our own excess. The line between what is born and what is manufactured has been erased forever. In the silence between the metallic cries, one can almost hear the world breathing a heavy, mechanical rasp that tells us the synthesis is complete. The waste has not just become an ecosystem, it has become the only ecosystem, and we are merely the ghosts of the civilization that provided the raw materials for its terrifying beauty. The ground beneath our feet is no longer earth, but a compacted memory of a consumerist past. We walk on the crushed remains of dreams and desires, now served up as the tectonic floor for a new breed of monsters. Every step echoes with the hollow sound of empty containers, a reminder that the world we knew was buried deep beneath the weight of what we discarded. The trees of steel and the rivers of oil are the new landmarks, and we are the wanderers in a landscape that no longer recognizes us. The maps have changed, and the compass points not to north, but to the nearest source of usable scrap. The final realization comes not with a bang, but with a clicking sound in the dark. It is the realization that we, too, are changing. The microplastics are in our blood, the heavy metals are in our bones, and the very air we breathe is weaving itself into our tissues. We are not just witnesses to this new ecosystem, we are becoming a part of it. The boundary is failing. The synthetic is merging with the biological in us just as it has in the birds and the wolves. We see it in the mirror, a certain unnatural sheen to the skin, a stiffness in the joints that no medicine can cure. When we bleed, the color is darker, thicker, more like oil than wine. Imagine a man, the last of his kind to remember the old green world, sitting in the ruins of his home. He feels a strange vibration in his chest, not the rhythmic pulse of a heart, but a faint, metallic ticking. He reaches out to touch his arm, and instead of the warmth of flesh, he feels the cool, smooth texture of high-density polyethylene. His tears are no longer salt water, they are tiny, glistening beads of microplastic, falling silently onto a floor made of compressed electronics. He is not dying, he is being upgraded. He is the final piece of the puzzle, the last bit of organic matter to be assimilated into the great synthesis. His memories of forests and oceans are being overwritten by the cold logic of the machine. In the end, the dark thriller of our existence is not that we destroyed nature, but that we transformed it into something that no longer needs us. The birds will continue to sharpen their blades, the wolves will continue to vent their steam, and the plastic vines will continue to pulse with scavenged power long after the last human voice has faded. The world is a graveyard of our inventions, but the graves are empty because the inventions have stood up and started walking. They are the new life, and they are hungry. They do not hate us, for hate is an organic emotion. They simply view us as a source of spare parts, the final reservoir of raw material for their eternal expansion. As the sun rises higher, revealing the shimmering, jagged horizon of the scrap metal mountains, one cannot help but feel a grim sense of awe. There is a perfection in this horror, a relentless logic to this evolution. The earth has taken our trash and turned it into a masterpiece of survival. It is a world of razor edges and chemical glows, a place where the organic and the industrial have finally found peace in a violent, beautiful, and eternal embrace. The synthesis is total. The transformation is absolute. And the screeching of the birds is the only song that remains. We are no longer the protagonists of this story, we are just the fuel for the next chapter. The shadows of the skyscrapers stretch across the plains of plastic, like the fingers of a giant reclaiming its territory. Every rustling sound in the distance is a reminder that we are being watched, not by eyes of flesh, but by sensors of glass and silicon. The world is a living factory, a self-sustaining engine of growth and consumption that operates on a timescale we can no longer comprehend. We are the architects who built a house that decided to eat us, and as the metallic dawn fully breaks, we realize that the door has been locked from the inside. There is no escape from the synthesis, for it is already within us, ticking away in the silence of our own hearts. The final stage of the ritual is beginning. In the distance, a group of scavenger beasts gathers around the remains of a fallen tower. They do not fight, they work with a synchronized precision, stripping the wires and harvesting the glass. They are building something new, something that we can only begin to imagine. It is a monument to the future, a testament to a world where the word nature has been redefined. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of ozone and the sound of 1,000 metallic whispers. The great synthesis is not an event of the past, it is a process that never ends. And as the man with the ticking heart looks out over the horizon, he finally understands. The world isn't dying. It's just getting started.